Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 129. Let's begin with the custom to wish each other Aksiv Chasimateva. Some people have the custom to actually begin from the 15th of Av, but definitely now, as we are coming from Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, the month, the Shabbos that benches the month of Elul, which is both the conclusive 12th month of the year and also the preparation for the new year. So definitely the custom starting from Chodesh Elul that we actually sign letters and we wish each other a blessed year in all ways, materially and spiritually. Time flies, as the expression goes. So yes, we're at the end of a new year, another year, and as the Alter Rebbe says in the Geras HaKodesh, Simin Yudalit, every year brings with it a completely new and unprecedented Chodesh energy. So may it be a blessed year in that sense, and the Chana ready in the preparation for it in Elul, with all kinds of new channels opening up for us in every given way, both material things, health, parnasa, livelihood, children, nachas from our children, and also spiritually from ourselves and from everyone around us. May it be a year of Geula and Amitis Vashlema, as the Rebbe indicates in his many letters and talks about the month of Elul, that we are, that Elul has a Rosh Tevis, the month Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, of 5 different Rosh Tevis acronyms, which correspond to the 3 kavim, the 3 pillars upon which the world stands: Torah, Veda, and Gemilas Chasadim. Torah, prayer, and acts of kindness and tzedakah. And then there's a Rosh Tevis that refers to tshuva, and finally Rosh Tevis that alludes also to the Geula. So Elul encompasses everything, being that, as I said, is the final month of the year. It also encompasses all the different paths and all the different aspects of a person's avodah and service. Both, as I said, the pillars, tshuva, maisim tevim. Chassidus explains tshuva makes the maisim tevim umeidim. Through tshuva, deeds become good and illuminating. And of course, as I said, the geula, which is the purpose of it all of existence, all of the work, the work we do in this world are the building blocks which cumulatively add up to the Gula Mitzvah with Mashiach leading the way. So, of course, the Chassidus Applied of that is obvious. This is a month of accounting, Cheshbon HaNefesh. Just as every day has the end of the day, we make an accounting. Anyone running a business or any other type of efficient system will always make an accounting, an evaluation of how your plans went. Did it work? What can be improved? What can be added? What needs to be eliminated? What needs to be modified? So the same thing, Elul is the collective accounting, cheshbon, the Chodesh HaCheshbon, accounting of the entire year, as well as a preparation of the next year. So it doesn't need any much elaboration. It really simply means being serious and being introspective and with integrity, looking at your life, looking at your activities, looking at yourself. As the beautiful different expressions of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that in the Lubavitch, the town of Lubavitch, you already felt Shabbos Mevorchim, you started feeling already the avir, the atmosphere changed. And the Rebbe has a diukim in explaining every precise point of that beautiful sikha, where he describes it not just poetically, but it all refers to the different aspects of Elul and how the atmosphere in every possible way becomes a more elevated one, a more refined one. So that's in a very general sense the concept of accountability. And frankly, all of therapy and all of healing, all of psychology really means nothing if you don't have accountability. Accountability means you're responsible. It means that you stand responsible and you're ready to take accounting and not blaming someone else and not minimizing and not denying, but rather addressing an issue head on. That's the basis and the foundation of all growth, of all healing, of all development, having that honest appraisal of yourself and your contributions in this world. And there's nothing to be afraid of, because on the contrary, awareness of a problem is half the cure. Avoiding it obviously just creates more problems. So Elul is an excellent time to review our lives, step back, and actually sit down and make an accounting. It's one of the reasons I prepared the book 60 Days, which is a journey that goes through from Rosh Chodesh Elul all the way till the end of Tishrei, the 60 days of Elul and Tishrei, a day-by-day type of journal of a person growing and accounting for. It's one way you can do this. We send out a weekly email that you can easily subscribe to, and as well as the book, of course, which is a more elaborate version of it, but every day has its particular thought, the meditation and exercise, as well as the facts and customs and other aspects connected to that particular day or to the general themes of Elul. Of course, there's also has to be mentioned, the Rebbe always mentioned it every year, Elul, the famous analogy of the Alter Rebbe, of the Melech Basode. The example giving, he asked the question, the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah A. He asked the question, if Elul, why is Elul called Chodesh HaRachamim? Because Kabbalah Chassidus says, then radiates Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, the 13 attributes of compassion that Hashem revealed to Moshe Rabbeinu when? During this month. When Moshe Rabbeinu was on the mountain and praying for forgiveness for the building of the golden calf, so Hashem in Pasha Kesisa reveals to him the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, which we actually, on Yom Kippur especially, repeat again and again and again. Hashem, Hashem, Ke'arachim V'chanan, and so on. The different order of how these 13 attributes are enumerated. So the Alter Rebbe asks a question, a very klotz kasha. The whole idea of Shabbos and Yontiv, what makes it special is because there's a special radiating divine energy. That's what makes it a holiday or a Shabbos. So since the whole month of El radiates a special energy called the 13 attributes, which comes from a very high level in Kesed, all the way in Atik, so why is the month of El a month of weekdays? It should be a month of holidays. And his answer is with this example, the example of a king who goes on a journey, and then he's on his way back to his palace, into the capital, into the palace. Now, of course, in the journey, the king does not dress the way he dresses when he's wearing all his robes and he's sitting in court on his throne. So as he's traveling more dressed in the weekday garment, so to speak. And as he's coming to the city, he passes through the fields that are surround the city, where the people of the fields who are working the fields, the farmers and others, can easily access him and approach him, which in the king's palace is not possible. There you have the ministers, you have to make an appointment, it's not so easy. So the month of El is like the king before he's going back to his palace, which will be Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. So in El, the king is in Levush Dechel. He's in the garments of the weekdays, garments. And his access is to everyone can come over, as the Rebbe brings from the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer from Tafshin. He can come over, his face is smiling, his Mekabel Kulam B'Sever Ponim Yofis, with a beaming face and a glowing face. And you can approach him and ask him for anything you wish. So El becomes an opportunity to access God, Hashem, without all the prerequisite introductions and preparations and priming that is necessary during the month of Tishrei. That's why Elul is weekdays, because the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim radiates in the field like Melech Basod. And of course, Elul therefore was the first mitzvah of all the Rebbe's campaigns. If you look in the Tafshin Yud Aleph, the first one was Elul. The one that Rebbe announced and said that he's asking Bakosha Nafshis. It's printed in Likutei Sichos Chelik Beis. It came out of Kuntras Elul. Then he's asking everyone to go around and meet and approach at least 10 Jews and say to them, you have 30 days to meet the great king. And now at this point we have the ability to greet him in the field and basically preparing for the new year. So all these letters are all printed. You can look them up, but I'm trying to put them in more practical language and in palatable terms that each of us can relate to. That means no matter who we are, even if we're in a farm, even if figuratively speaking, even when we're in our mundane activities, El has a certain uniqueness that even Tishrei doesn't have. Now obviously the revelations of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are greater, because that's why there's such holy days, days of awe, but and then days of Simcha, Yom Neroyim, then Simcha and joy. However, El has that component where the king is coming to us on our terms, which gives us that ability to prepare in that fashion. Additionally, this coming Shabbos will be is Rosh Chodesh El, the first day of Rosh Chodesh El, the second day is on Sunday. The two opinions when Moshe went up the third time on the mountain to when he was begging for forgiveness and appealing to God. So we know the first time he went up there was to receive the Torah 40 days. came down 17th of Tammuz, saw that they built the calf, he broke the tablets, went back up on the mountain for another 40 days, which is Rosh Chodesh. So there's two opinions, whether he came down on the first day and went up on the next day, or he came down the second day, or went up the same day. Two different opinions. But regardless, Rosh Chodesh, whether it's the first or second day, is the day when Moshe Rabbeinu goes back on the mountain for the third time. And this time is successful. 40 days later will be Yom Kippur. So Elul, 30 days of Elul, and 10 more days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. So that includes the 40 days, and Yom Kippur, Salachti Kidvarech, and he's successful. So we're now beginning slowly that journey, Moshe's journey back up on the mountain, when the 13 attributes are revealed, but they're revealed in a state even when we're in our garments, that are weekday garments, even in our mundane activities. So this next Shabbos will also be Rosh Chodesh, and we read also, and we read Parsha Re'eh. So one thought on the Parsha Re'eh that connects to this as well, and that is that the pasuk says, "Behold, see, I bestow upon you, I give you today the blessing," and also says the opposite of blessing. So the Rebbe asked the question, indicates a positive thing. Behold, I give you something. And whenever it says the word neisen is a matana, kol neisen bayin yofa neisen. When you give something a matana, it's with a beautiful eye, like Sever Panim Yofas of Elul. A matana. So it's understandable, the gift of the blessing. But how could you say the same breath in the same sentence that also the opposite of a blessing is also part of the gift? Because Nechi goes on neisen goes on all aspects. And hayem, as the Tzemach Tzedek explains, is nitzchi. It means like as if it's today. Every day we receive it. And in a revealed way, Re'iyah is the highest level of revelation, as you see it with the hisamtus and a resonance that's as if you're seeing it with your own eyes. How could you say that on the second half of the sentence, of the verse? And the answer is a tremendous lesson in life. The answer is that a blessing can take on two shapes. When you're traveling on a road and you don't know where to go, you come to a crossroad. You don't know, should you go to the right, should you go to the left? So what's the great blessing? It's not just someone tells you go on the right path. They also tell you don't go on that path. The blessing here obviously is not the opposite of blessing. The gift here rather is not the opposite of blessing. The gift is to tell you what path not to travel on, which sometimes is even more important than to know what path to travel on. Sometimes you take the path to travel on, but no one told you not to take another path. To know where not to go can save you a lot of time and energy and aggravation. So there's two parts to the blessing. Behold, I bestow, I give you today as a gift, with a kind eye, with a beautiful eye, I give you this gift, to give you the gift, what path to travel on, what path to not travel on. These are the things you should do, and these are the things you shouldn't do. Which, talking about Chassidus Applied, applying it to life, that's what we really need in life, is that type of direction, not just where to go, but also where not to spend extra time and energy in our journey. Time is precious. You could waste a lot of time to know what path not to go. In any type of good situation of growth and personal development and any other way of serving and becoming a more refined person and serving God and so on, you want to know what path is the right one, also what's the not correct path. In Chassidus brings a moshel when it talks, the moshel of the example of mile lamata, mamat lamayl, the journey, whether it's from the top down, bottom up. So the example given is the example of a mountain. So sometimes it's one person standing on top of the mountain, the mashpia, and another is standing on the bottom of the mountain or in the valley. So one way is that the one on top comes down. But real Aveda, especially through tefilah prayer, is mamat lamayl, like ani l'deidi v'deidi li. You initiate. First, I initiate. Ani l'deidi, I reach to my beloved, and then my beloved to me. So Chassidus explains, and Tzemach Tzedek brings the mashal from the Alter Rebbe and the Ayin Beis in volume 2, approximately chapter 375, a little later, 380, where he talks about this idea, and he says that when you climb from the bottom up, there are a few conditions. When you come from the top down, there are less conditions because the one above is coming down to you, so you're just recipient, like Matan Torah. But climbing up is a condition. Number one is that you have to exert effort. Number two, you have to know what path to travel on. And you could take the wrong path, you could waste a lot of time, and it can actually be destructive, as he says there. The hidden paths, you have to know what roads to take. As I just said, to know what path to go and what path not to go. And the third thing is that you have the right garments. When you're climbing a mountain, you need to wear the right garments, or else they become an impediment in your journey. And all this you reach commensurate to what you're able to through your efforts. That's as he puts it there. It doesn't connect it directly to Elul, but it's a similar theme. So it all comes together that we have now before us a month where we have the ability through our efforts, and even beside, even when we're in the field, and even when we may be dirty, or we may be unclean and not really completely prepared, we can also approach the King, and he's smiling to us, because that's exactly where his place is at that time, before we enter the palace and Tishrei and all the Giluyim and revelations that come then. So with that, let us go into some questions. Travel and tefilah b'tzibur. What is the Chabad Chassidic view and or the Rebbe's view on travel for the purposes of rest and recreation as it pertains to tefilah b'tzibur, which means davening with a minyan? My wife and I work full-time all year round. During the summer months when our children are away at camp, we have an opportunity to take a few days off from work and to travel for some much-needed relaxation to places surrounded by Earth's natural wonders. Is it appropriate to schedule such travel arrangements or rest and recreation, knowing in advance that there will be no minyan during weekdays for Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv? Okay. Generally speaking, I really don't address halachic questions that should be asked to a competent Rav. And this too, I say the same, this should be asked to a Rav, to knowing exact details and so on. But because it touches upon, obviously, the season we're in, but also has some hashkafa elements, so let me say the following. First of all, let's just talk about vacation in general. As the Rebbe makes very clear, especially when he talks about summer camps and children and schools, vacation, you never vacation from the word vacate to vacate. We don't vacate our service and our purpose of existence. Just like a person does not vacate, God forbid, their lives. We vacate perhaps the more a material immersion and all the toil and the yoke of work, so we can then refresh our bodies so our souls can be rejuvenated. But never, God forbid, that we're taking vacation from our soul's work. That's one thing. And yes, absolutely, a body should be rested, because a body that's rested, as the Rambam says, allows us to have the clarity of mind and heart and spirit to be able to study, to do mitzvahs peacefully, which is why Chachamim, why our Chazal and our sages pined for Geula, was for that reason, to have that menuchas hanefesh, the peace of mind and the comfort to be able to immerse themselves completely and not have to worry about health issues, food issues, shelter, obviously not all the oppression, anxieties, to be able to completely focus on serving God. So the concept of having that type of comfort and peace of the body, the body resting in order to have the soul's rejuvenation, absolutely. Even though that's not the question, I just wanted to point that out. And now, regarding the actual issue of tefilah b'tzibur, what the Rabbanim will tell you is the following. Obviously, if you could go to a place where you could also have both, where you could find the minyan and have a place to daven, especially on Shabbos, but also weekdays, then that would be preferable. But if for whatever reason that's not the vacation place you're going, you could go even though there's no minyan. Obviously, that doesn't exempt you not from davening. Davening has to take place, and even on Shabbos, you could, if you're going on vacation, it's not something you cannot go unless there's a minyan. There's no such leikuva. However, again, preference means going even l'fnim meshura sadin in the spirit. Obviously, the holier and the more soulful your journey, your vacation will be, the more it will actually rejuvenate your soul and your body and be able to accomplish your mission, your divine mission in this world. But again, should it be likuva, meaning that you cannot go without that? That's not necessarily the case. But I still suggest everyone asking their competent rabbi, local rabbi, for more details regarding this matter. Okay. Next question. What is the Torah's approach to saving money? Is saving money for retirement or future expenses a lack of bitachon? Should the money instead be used when it's available and trust that Hashem will provide in the future? Okay. Now there's a few breakdown of a few questions that go in the same genre, the same vein, same family. So let me read them. Question 1. I can probably say that you are my greatest teacher. I cannot think of anyone I learned more hours of Torah with other than you. Thank you. Well, thank you. What is Torah's approach with saving money? Shall we save for retirement, a 2-year-old child's schooling, or wedding in Mitzvah Hashem, and planning ahead, is planning ahead a lack of betach? What about saving for emergencies? I have not been mesudar with my money, organized that is, and I read a book from Dave Ramsey that helped me with my spending. He recommends in one of his steps to always forever have money that is there just in case something goes sour. To me, this idea is not Jewish. It feels like a lack of betachon. What are your thoughts? Question 2. Thank you for your wonderful classes. I listened to you this week discussing spending, which was a number of weeks ago. My husband and I are saving for retirement as suggested by our financial planner. However, from your lecture and the sources you quoted, it would appear that we're amongst those of little faith. Possibly we should be doing something else with that money that is more here and now. Should we be giving it away to charity, spending more on ourselves? What was the Rebbe's approach to saving for retirement? You mentioned question 3. You mentioned previously about being generous with money and not being frugal. Are there any problems with saving money either by saving up money or by being careful about what one uses, such as the amount of electricity one uses? What is considered bread of shame? Can someone get free samples or enter contests or lotteries? Okay, that's moving it a bit away, but let me try to address this as best of my ability. We know that from the Rebbe, there's a directive a number of times that about more organizations where they have this thing called an endowment fund. An endowment fund is getting money from philanthropists or from foundations, grants that don't go toward being spent. They go into an account that is forever frozen, and you live off the interest. So it's like an endowment, like $100 million, $100 billion endowments, and so on. And the Rebbe spoke out against it. He says, a message should not be just putting away money, it should be using the money. This doesn't mean that we have to be not practical and prudent, but that idea of just putting away $100 million or whatever, and it's not even for a rainy day, it's fundamentally just that type of security is ultimately somewhat of a lack of the word betachon, but a lack of the way the Eibishter wants us to be fluid in our activities and so on. However, I don't recall seeing the same thing said about individuals. Should we put away money? But you can argue that a certain element, the same idea. Now, I think we have to distinguish, and again, if anyone has direct sources, I have not seen notes, answers, or letters from the Rebbe. I'm not saying that there aren't. There very likely are, I just haven't seen them. Meaning not seeing something doesn't mean that it's not there. So if someone does have any material on this or information on this, I'd be really, not just for myself, but for the benefit of everyone, I would read it out to the audiences, and I think it's a practical question. However, I will use the spirit of what I understand from the Rebbe's ideas in answering that question. To put away money, for example, for a wedding of a child is not necessarily like an endowment. That's a very practical thing. And instead of worrying before, take a little part of your salary and put it away in an account and say, I'm going to save it. It's a very realistic thing. Your children are growing up. They will be a wedding in Mitzvah Hashem. And why should it be a lack of betachon to put it aside? And just to spend more money on what? And spending money on... If you're talking about a person must spend money for education of their children and they have nothing extra, so they have nothing to put aside, that's another story. But firstly, as they say, probably everybody can put a little aside. So it really comes down to case by case. So the idea of putting some money aside toward weddings of children or something that's going to be necessary for life, either your own life or for the life of your children and families, that I don't personally see that would be going against a matter of betachon, because it's just like you plan on putting away, let's say, money for Shabbos. Why is it not lack of betachon? Even though there's the difference of Shammai and Hillel, where Hillel every day was Baruch Yem Yem, every day he felt the blessing of Hashem. But Shammai, it says that already on Sunday, Zochres Yem HaShabbos, he already started, if he saw something special, he put it away for Shabbos. So it doesn't say one is more betachon than the other. It's both different elements. Hillel, Chassidus explains, has a certain element of betachon, but Shammai was permeated with the kedusha of Shabbos all the time. And it's consistent with their difference of approach of koyach and poil. Hillel went by what was there, so he had it right there. He used it for the right purposes. Shammai saw the potential of Shabbos coming. So you don't say it's a lack of betachon on Shammai's part, even though there's elements of betachon that are deeper in Hillel's approach. So, but the concept of being able to put aside something that you know Just like, let's say, a person is saving money to to buy a house. So B'tachon doesn't dictate, listen, spend your money now and don't put it away and save, so you'll be able to buy a house in 5 years. Because practically speaking, buying a house may save you money, even more money down the road. Just using that as an example, if that indeed is the case. So the concept of planning ahead by putting aside money per se is not the opposite of B'tachon. If you're just putting it aside because there's the element of having security, and it's not for a wedding, and it's not for anything else, then that is far more questionable. Far more questionable, because what is it for? Just your own fear, your own concern. I should, as an aside, even though it's not an aside, the issue of retirement, as we know, the Rebbe is very strongly against retirement. So I am assuming when you say retirement, you mean that you don't have the same energy, the same full-time job, and instead of retiring and just playing golf, you're learning tefilah, Kenim, Levi, Yitzchak, whether it's a man or a woman, learning Torah and spending the time. And since you're learning Torah, you may not be making the same amount of income as when you were in your earnings stage of your life, when you're working harder and making more money. I just wanted to qualify that retirement we mean just sitting around and doing nothing and being funded by the money you put aside, which again is not the kavanah, is not the purpose. So it really comes down to what you put it aside for, and if it's in a prudent, practical plan, or it's just the idea of just having money sitting around, which we all know we can't take with ourselves. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to splurge and money that comes your way, but B'tachon doesn't mean you have to spend every penny and waste it. At the end of the day, spend it, like we learned, the Chassidus explains, that just like you shouldn't put more energy than necessary in the effort necessary to make money, because of B'tachon, God will give you what you need. At the same time, the Alter Rebbe does say at the end of chapter 8, Revach, he uses, that you're allowed to even learn the Mudechel if you want to make more money, being more wealthy, not just the minimum. So there is the concept of making more money versus less money, but that too, and the same thing with spending, and spending doesn't mean B'tachon doesn't mean just spend everything that you made that week. B'tachon may mean to use some of it, give tzedakah, put aside for family, for other needs, helping others. I mean, the bottom line is B'tachon is much broader than just are you going to spend it or are you going to save it. So savings just for no reason is probably less of something that's acceptable. Again, I didn't see it specifically, but in the spirit of it, saving for something that's absolutely a need, maybe not a need today, a need tomorrow, a need in a year from now, yesh mochel achel zman, meaning tomorrow could be also a year or 10 years, is part of a person's prudent way of supporting themselves and their family. Okay, so that's the general answer to this all. And B'tachon, at the end of the day, is not about whether you spend or not. B'tachon is your attitude. Your attitude is that you are Hashem's shliach in this world. And He's going to bless you with everything you need. You don't have to be smarter than Hashem. You don't have to be smarter than anybody. You have to be practical. You have to follow halacha, but not suddenly say, I'm going to be smarter, because many times you can put aside money and do all kinds of things and then discover that, God forbid, it's used for the wrong thing. Just like the Rebbe speaks about making money in times when you're not supposed to, God forbid, a person keeps their store open on Shabbos because they think they'll make more money. Sometimes that money ends up being spent on things we don't want to spend it on. So it's a much deeper story than just whether we figure it out. So B'tachon is an attitude, it's a mindset of knowing to be at peace that Hashem will bless you with what you need. And you have to make the right keli b'derech hateva for these blessings. You don't have to over-agonize and over-plan and over financial planning. Yeah, some say overdoing that is also not necessarily, maybe the way of the world, but it's not necessarily the way of Torah. And yeah, this doesn't mean we shouldn't be prudent. One more thing I would add, the Rebbe brought a number of times regarding organizations, Mosdes, that the Frierdiker Rebbe always had a little chayv. He always had debt. He was always in debt. Not overabundant debt, the Rebbe said, to the point where it's overwhelming, but always spending a little more than making. Because the purpose of the money is to be productive. The same approach I would spill over to also individuals. Obviously, that doesn't mean to be in debt. A moised is a moised, it has a mission. But with us as well, not to be in debt, but also you don't have to sit around and sit on money just because you have it. It could also be a sign of a person's greed and selfishness and insecurity. They have to sit on money. And it's part of the problem of a lot of people having a difficulty to give tzedakah, like he explains in chapter 37 brilliantly, how money, chaya nafshi, captures all the resistance of the animal soul, because it's about me. Money is the symbol for what we call life energy, soul energy. because it symbolizes your ingenuity, your time. It's a measure of a person's so-called success in this world. Worshipping money, at the end of the day, is absolutely hepech habetachon. It's the opposite of trust. Money is a tool, and it's a blessing. And if you're given in abundance, so Adrabah, give more charity. To sit on money is not considered to be a matter of betachon. Is it an assign? Of course it's an assign. Because everybody says, you know what, who knows what will be, I have to put aside. But the true maimin, the true believer, the true person of trust will see the gift that God has given, as David HaMelech makes it clear, the Medrash and Chassidus brilliantly explains the idea of tzedakah. Why when David asks Eibishter, the first question, long before, I don't want to say lahavdil on Marx, that Rebbe said not to say lahavdil, but the first question of economic classes was asked by David HaMelech, not by Marx, Karl Marx that is. He asked the Eibishter, Lama barasa, why did you create aniyim v'ashirim, poor people and wealthy people? It says, Liya kesav liya zov num Hashem. God has all the silver and all the gold. You could have distributed it equally. And the Eibishter answered with a pasuk, Chesed ve'emes ma'yet tzarua. If I had done that, who would then do chesed in this world? Everyone would have equal. There'd be no reason to give anyone. There'd be no give and take. There'd be no concept of chesed. So what does that think about that? That means that Hashem created unequal status. He blessed some people with more and some people with less. Not for them to have more, but for there to be chesed in this world, for them to be wise. So Chassidus says it's a pekadon. God entrusted them with a pekadon. I'm entrusting you to take care of this money and wisely understand that I've blessed you to have more, so you should be more chesed in this world. So when a person misunderstands, or in their own greed and selfishness decides, no, this belongs to me, I earned it on my own, and so on, or God wants me to keep it, all these cheshbonos are going against what God wants. He's given you to entrust you. I entrusted you with the wisdom and the sensitivity and the empathy to know that you have more in order to you to give others, or else I wouldn't have given you more. That's ultimately the meaning of essentially what real tzedakah is. It's not you giving yours, you're giving what God entrusted you, you're his shliach. But that requires the Aveda, and learning chapter 37 many times to understand why tzedakah is such a powerful mitzvah. So that's, I think, also important to put into this picture, because it's an attitude to the whole thing. And practically, as I said, coming down to not to find excuses. If money is needed for certain things, yes, being prudent is part of what Hashem wants us to be, and not in a way of al yivazbez adam yesem mechemish. It says a person shouldn't splurge more, but Alter Rebbe qualifies in Tanya, except when it comes to in chay nafshe. When it comes to sinagei benefesh, kol hashal adam yitin ba'ad nafshe. Everything a person has will give away for. He's not going to say, I'm only going to give 10% to medical bills, God forbid, to save my life or my children's lives. Why? Because money is what's money compared to life. So when it comes to tzedakah, where a person feels it's negei benefesh, that's another story. But beyond that, al yivazbez, there is this 10%, 20%, not more than that. The Baal Shem Tov has an interesting taich, since we're already talking about it, and it's connected to this week's parsha, where it says nos and titen, and even me'apomim to give. So he says the word al yivazbez, that you shouldn't be splurged more when you feel it's splurging. That's what you shouldn't do. But if you didn't feel it's splurging, you feel it's God's gift to you and you want to give, then you can give more than 20%, more than a chemish, more than a fifth. So all this is part of understanding what betachon is regarding finances. So if, and objectively speaking, not because of your own excuse, you say, I'm putting it away because I heard Rabbi Jacobson said that there are conditions you put it away, you have to look into your own heart and soul if it's coming from the right place or not. And always good to check with somebody objective. So that sums up that there are scenarios, definitely, but a general attitude is that the gift given to us, it's not about just whether we save them or not. It's a blessing from God, and you have to treat it as such, not ours. It doesn't belong to us, just like our body doesn't belong to us, just like our life doesn't belong to us. And actually, this creates a person to be much healthier and wealthier person. Means not just that you're satisfied with a lot. It means what's given to you, you're satisfied with, and what's extra that you get, you share freely, obviously, as I said, in a prudent fashion. But money does have the ability to create a deep selfishness, a deep separation from one another, where some people think they're either better, and they think that they are more special, or they just think that, hey, listen, I have more. Why shouldn't I behave that way? And do have a condescending attitude often to others, and their money they see themselves as being better than others. When the opposite is true, that Hashem gave it to them in order to give it and share it with. Okay. Another topic, next topic. Owning a pet. What does Torah say about owning a pet, especially if it isn't a kosher animal? Is there a problem for a frum family to own a dog? Okay, so Shulchan Aruch, let's see, yeah. Shulchan Aruch, well, before I get into the answer, we see that practically, we see there are families, even frum families, some have a dog, some have a cat, some have fish, some have birds, and it's not necessarily considered an isser. So to say that it's not permitted is not correct, as the Shulchan Aruch says in Chesha Mishpat Tov Tes Siv Gimel. So what does it say there? That it's prohibited to keep a kelev ra. A kelev ra is understood as being a bad dog, meaning a barking dog or a wild dog, unless it's bound with a metal chain. That's the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef says that. Or you live on the border where it's dangerous and you may need to have a dog for protection. The Ramah says that nowadays, living in the world in which we live, for protection it's permitted. But nevertheless, it should always be changed to prevent it from doing harm. So from there you derive that if it's not a kelev ra, it's allowed. It's only the kelev ra part of it. So there are different types of dogs, and a dog we know for sure is not a kosher animal, and yet it's permitted. In the Gemara in Baba Kama, 83 Pei Gimel Aleph, 83a, so it says anyone who raises a dog is not considered blessed. And it seems to be all kinds of dogs, which some say may be the reason that some people, even though it may not be an Isser in Halacha, but some people avoided it. The Alter Rebbe in Gshmiris Guver Nefesh Siv Gimel says that Gemara applies only to a kelev ra. So that again makes a distinction between a so-called wild or bad dog or an aggressive dog, however you would translate kelev ra. To make it go further, the Yam Shel Shlema on Baba Kama says that this Isser about raising a dog applies even to a dog which doesn't bite but only barks. It seems that the Alter Rebbe is going with this opinion, but if it's chained, again, like the Beis Yosef said, if it's chained, the Isser goes off, which means it's not prohibited. Because people are not afraid of the bark of a chained dog. That's what he says, basically. And finally, Rabbi Yaakov Emden, his Tshuvas, which is Chelik Aleph, the Tshuvas Yud Zayin, he says altogether it's forbidden for a Jew to have a dog. So there is one Rabbi Yaakov Emden that actually asks it, because it goes into the category of Maisa Akum, which is behaving like the Gentile world, which means it's not the spirit of being a Jew. Now, this is all essentially the basics of an halacha. As far as lefnim meshurus hadin, so we know that in general we always were careful in what we expose our children to and ourselves to. So even images, as the Rebbe has the classic famous Sikha Chav Cheshvan Mem Daled, Toshim Mem Daled, printed in volume 25 of the Likutei Sichos, page 309. I had the merit, the schus to write up that Sikha. So there are all the details there about going to the zoo, but the Rebbe talks about not looking at images and actually cites a few places where women going to the mikveh were making careful they didn't see a dog or they saw other chaya tmei after coming from the mikveh. You have the different examples of, that's from Sharei Dura in Sofil Chasnida. You have the Rekeach, the famous Rekeach, that says in Hilchos Shvuos, section 296, he says that when you take a child to school, the day you take him to school, and to see the first time he sees, is it the first time? I'm not sure if it's the first time, but the first time he sees letters, holy letters, they cover his face that he shouldn't see any animal that's impure, a dog that's impure. So obviously having it in the home is clearly not fitting to that. But there, to say it's an Isser, prohibition is a bigger statement than saying it may not be in the spirit. I'm not here to come and make a ruling, obviously. I could just share with you what we know. So in general speaking, we want to expose ourselves, our children, to holy things as much as possible. So though at the same time, people talk about the beauty of having a pet and the love that they experience, and even in a dog and so on. I'm not here to judge anyone and say otherwise, but nevertheless, I stated the facts as I know them. If there's more material that I have not mentioned that anybody knows, please. There's also questions in halacha about bringing a dog into a shul, and of course walking a dog on Shabbos. It's not so simple, all these matters. But to say an outright Isser prohibition, no, but the spirit, not necessarily is it the spirit, and that people have to make a decision on their own, what standard they have. And obviously, reading the Sikha Chav Cheshvan, Tav Shem Dal could help set the tone of, in general, what we want to expose ourselves and our children to. Okay, next question. This is on a negative sense. I'd rather always want to stay away from topics like this, but what can we do? We'll talk about cremation. Lo Yaleinu, someone passes away. The story of the cremation, which has become lately a much bigger issue. What is the inherent value of a Jewish burial, is the question. Upon death, all souls separate. Upon death, all souls separate from their bodies and return to their makers. So why does it matter what we do with the body? Why is cremation a calamity according to Torah? What happens spiritually when a body is cremated? Unfortunately, I know someone who recently passed away and she had requested to get cremated, and the husband is respecting her wishes. She's Jewish, she's not. I'm feeling so heartbroken. How much are we supposed to push the husband? What is my responsibility in all of this? Okay. So first of all, let's start with a basic principle. The Torah, Judaism, and even common sense dictates life does not end upon death. It just goes into another stage. To make a statement that a person who lived 120 years, or 100 years, or 70 years, or 80 years, and people should have arichas yom v'shanim tevis, and that upon death it's over, so who really cares what happens, is essentially an insult to the person. The good deeds they did was a body and soul together. The soul cannot do good deeds in this world without a body. To give charity, you need to have a hand, an arm. To run and help someone, you need legs. To use your mind and think of creative ways to make this world a better place, you need a mind. So neshama is obviously the driving force, but without a body, it can't function in this world. A body without a soul, obviously, is just an empty container. So it's fundamental to the dignity and majesty of life is to know that a body and soul were partners. And to state that it's all over and who really cares throughout the body, absolutely not. That's why the Torah sees the sanctity is not just when you're alive, the sanctity upon how to put the body to rest. That's number one. Number two, the body does not belong to us. Not in lifetime and not in death. That's why in Torah and Judaism, you're not allowed to mutilate yourself. Obviously, mutilating another person is altogether not, of course. But yourself, you could say, it's my body, who cares? I'm not hurting anyone but me. It's not your body. It's the Chasim Shal Kodesh Baruch Hu, the words of the Radbaz. It's God's property. Like I mentioned before about money and stuff, He gave it to you on loan to take care of. And that's why you have to take care of it, not just for you to be healthy, because it's God's gift to you. So you can't mutilate it. You can't do things that if a person behaves unhealthy with their body in a way they're insulting God. I gave you a gift. What'd you do with my gift? When it comes to when the day comes, when the body, soul returns to its maker, it's not your body. Offer ata vel offer tashuv. God took the earth from the ground, imbued it with a soul. And now He says, just like I brought earth and I brought it alive, now give it back to the earth where I took it from. It's the decent thing to do. If someone gives you a gift, would you come back and say, here's the gift back, it's charred and burned, or dust, or I cremated it? Why would it's an insult to the person who gave you the gift. So that's the next point. And finally, we believe absolutely that the body will return, Tchiz HaMesim. And that's why the body never really completely decomposes. By tzaddikim altogether doesn't decompose. But even by the rest, there's the etzem luz, some bones, something that remains. Because the bottom line is the body retains in some, and today you don't need major faith for this. It's basic physics, the DNA, the subatomic particles remain intact. That does not die. DNA does not die. So there are parts of the body that remain, And why would one do something to it, to in any way to alter it, let alone to cremate it? And finally, who cremated Jewish bodies? We don't have to go back and turn the clock thousands of years. The last 70 years ago, how many bodies were cremated? So why would we even go there? Just look at a video if you really want something gory and see what cremation. People think it's some type of peaceful thing. Cremation of a body takes a lot of effort. There's bones, you have to grind. I don't even want to go into the morbid details. So why would you do something of that nature? We put it back to earth. We respect in awe and humility the dignity and the mystery of life and death. Just like the body came, the door opens up once when the womb opens and a child enters this world, we open the door one more time, the earth opens up and takes back its own. And we rest there, and that's a sacred space. We consider a burial place a sacred space. So many of our brothers and sisters don't have a space. The ones that were cremated and their dust disgraced in the worst possible way. They don't have a marker. We have the opportunity, just like in life and also in death, to honor our souls and bodies. Now, what one can do, listen, you have to choose your battles, and you have to see. If you have influence over people, you can explain this to them. And best is to preemptive explanation, not wait till the last minute, but explain this in a way that it's understanding. It's not about cremation, it's about the attitude we take to life and death, and about who owns your body and what we do with it. Then that's the best way. If you have a situation you can influence, by all means, but you can't do anything, aggressive or violent or illegal, obviously. There are people who make these decisions, and that has to be respected, whether we like it or not. But if you can influence, like anything, you try to influence anyone who you think is doing something wrong in the best possible way. Now, what happens to a spiritual when a body is cremated? I'm not an expert in what happens, but something you're doing to a body that is like a body that has retained all the good deeds, in some ways you're like erasing it. Is it erased? Of course God knows. But still, why would we go and do such a thing? So I don't want to go into detail of what you're doing, but let's put it this way, it's not a positive. Let's suffice with that. We should only speak about good things. Okay. Let's go to the next topic, Jewish life on Mars. I know the topics sound very diverse, but we have a bunch of different topics. Jewish life on Mars. Here's the question. What relevance would Judaism have to people living on Mars? With living on other planets seen as feasible in the foreseeable future, what implications would this have for Torah observance and for Jews? Earth seems to be the place God chose for giving the Torah and for us building a dira b'tachtenim, a home for the divine in this world. Do other planets also wait for us to transform them? If yes, how would Torah mitzvahs be observed there when so many of its laws apply only on Earth, for example, Shabbos and holidays based on solar and lunar cycles, laws pertaining to Israel, etc. Another variation of the question came in. Thank you so much for your inspiring lessons. I have a question regarding Mars. Recently, science have predicted a small community of humans on Mars within 10 years. What relevance would Judaism have to Jews living on Mars? A year on Mars lasts almost twice as long, 686.98 Earth days. How would one observe the Jewish calendar? Would the Martian yearly cycle even matter? What about when Mashiach comes? Would Jews on Mars fly with clouds to Israel? Yeah, you could probably add a whole bunch of other details to that question. Okay, well, let us begin with this. God created all the entire universe, the entire solar system, and all the solar systems. We may never understand the purpose of it all because it's so vast, and we may never even go there. But it's there. Maybe it's a reminder of Ma Gadlo Masecha, the awesomeness of God's creation. Richard Feynman, the great physicist, the Jewish physicist, said he believed in God until he saw how vast the universe is, and then he started having doubts. Why? Because why would God create so much wasted space? I saw that he said this after he passed away. I would have written him a letter and said, sometimes that's the reason. Because God wanted to give an example in Gashmis of something that's awesome to remind us of the Ma Gadlo Marabu Masecha. However, getting back to the point, so it's all created for a purpose. When we elevate and through mitzvahs and through our actions in this world, we're elevating not just Earth, but the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and going through the planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, whether it's a planet or not. But regardless, every star, every fiber of existence is elevated. You could say, but we haven't never spent there. We've never gone there. We haven't even sent a spaceship there. So he says in Tanya already that when you bring a korban selis, mincha, which is an offering, a mincha offering, which is made of selis, of flour and oil, you elevate the whole minat sameach. Everything. Flour is made from minat sameach, from grain. You elevate it all. So it doesn't mean you have to actually elevate every piece of grain on earth. You elevate the species through that. So you could say the same thing when we transform this world, we transform all the worlds. If indeed science and the human capacity, just as it has to live, to travel to the moon, can create colonies to live on other planets, and there's actually the story of the Rebbe that I received a letter from someone that I made famous when I publicized it after Torah Meaningful Life came out, that the Rebbe said, just like we talked about there, about Asimov, Isaac Asimov, the foundation of other planets, satellite lives, the Rebbe didn't negate it. He says, I have the same dream about the world having satellites of Jewish outposts everywhere, all connected. Because that was the big rage in the 40s, that discussion about the foundation, that idea of life on other planets. I'm sorry, not life on other, living on other planets. So even if we could colonize and it could be human life, that means God meant it to be that way, and it's possible that it could happen. Since it's possible it could happen, it would mean that there would be a way that you could apply halacha and Torah mitzvahs. How would that happen? Well, there's also laws about the North Pole and the South Pole, where half a year is light, half a year is dark. What do you do about Shabbos? What do you do about Yom Tov? What do you do about Shkia and so on? So the same questions would have to be posed, and there are different opinions how to address that. If indeed it's possible, means then God, the Torah, would be applicable, that a Jew could go there. Maybe some Rabbanim would say maybe you shouldn't go because we have maybe too many questions in halacha. Just like during Sfira, the Rebbe suggests not to go over the international timeline because it creates too many questions and shilas. But clearly the Torah is meant to be to live by. And therefore, if indeed we could colonize other planets, then we'd have to, just like we have to deal with technology today, that would have to be dealt with as well. On the other hand, it's possible that we will never have life on other planets precisely because Torah mitzvahs cannot be applied there. Now, clearly, there can be a different Torah for a different planet, because only one Torah, Achas L'Kolona, there's one Torah, there's one God. The Rebbe actually says as much in the famous Sikha that, I don't know if I ever spoke about it here on MyLife, but I've written it up in English, a Sikha, Shabbos Pasha Dvorim, Chazein, Tovshin Chof Tes, the second time man landed on the moon. So the Rebbe spoke about life on other planets. And one of the things he said at the end is that life on other planets is definitely, there's an opinion like that. Aru Meroiz. Meroiz is like, can even pronounce as Mars. Ero Teshvel, the Teshvel, that means the inhabitants of Mars, or Meroiz, not saying it's Mars. And the Rebbe said, but life cannot be life of free will. Because then we'd have to get into the thorny issue if they have free will. What Torah? The Torah was only given in Har Sinai on this earth. But that's life on other planets, other types of life. But that a life on earth should be able to inhabit another planet, then as I said, these are the options, the way we would approach it. So it's interesting exercise on of trying to apply and see how Torah would apply to that situation, but there's no question it could be applied, and we would then deal with it as it spoke. Now, of course, the Beis HaMikdash is in Har HaBayis, is in Yerushalayim, not on Mars. So that perhaps would bring a Mashiach came, whether it's possible there would be life on Mars, maybe there'd be other inhabitants, other peoples, with Jewish people maybe would not go there because of this reason. But these are things that can be discussed, but I think I covered at least the scope of it. Okay. Next question is just a very quick question. Someone just throw in the question that says they see Barabbas in Likutei Torah and Tereh, they see the word Barabbas in a number of places. Barabbas is another word for Medrash Rabbah. So they call it Rabbah because there's the Rabbis, the different Midrashim, so it would be plural Rabbis. So it says anywhere, it says Isa Barabbas, let's say Bamidbar Rabbis, it would be like Bamidbar Rabbah, what we call Bamidbar Rabbah. So that's a quick answer to that. Now we have some follow-up questions regarding, let me see if I covered all those questions here. Yeah, regarding beard and balancing fun and higher purpose. But because of time limitations, I am going to leave that for next week. Yeah. And I'm going to go to the Chassidus question, and then we'll do the essays. So the Chassidus question of this week is the following. In the intro to the second section of Tanya, just give me a moment, I want to just look something up here. Okay, in the intro to the second section of Tanya called Chinuch Cotton, 76a, the Alter Rebbe writes, between one level and the next, before he can reach the higher one, he's in a state of decline, nefilah from his previous level. Please explain this. Why must there be a decline before reaching the next level? Okay, so this is talking about a Chinuch Cotton, with Alter Rebbe talking about Shevet Yipul Tzadik V'Kom, that he speaks that between levels, he says there's a nefilah, a decline. So you're asking the question, how do you explain? Why do we must have this? Okay. So, there's actually a letter from the Rebbe in Igros Kodesh, volume 14, page Tov Nun Ches, 458, where he actually answers this question. He says, Shalose Betanya, so again, Igros Kodesh of the Rebbe, volume 14, page Tov Nun Ches, 458, where he says, what you ask about between Madrega and Madrega, Favos Muzayin, it's a Yiddish letter, and a nefilah, the Rebbe gives a beautiful example, and I'll just sum it up. That when a person is holding by a certain level, so he's involved, his mind is involved in the things that brought him to this level. In order to come to a higher level, he has to then immerse himself in other subject matters, and only after that type of effort, in that type of comprehension and feeling, can he come to a higher level. But you can't be immersed in what you were involved in before. You can't be immersed in two things at the same time. So he has to stop thinking and applying himself to the previous ideas and actually stop doing them. So therefore there's something going to be lost, because he's going to be missing the results from what he had done in the previous level in order to reach the next level, even though some reshim, some impression remains. The Rebbe gives an example. A good redner, a good speaker, through a hislavas dikareda, passionate talk or sermon, he brings his listeners to tears. Even though the next speaker, who may speak even deeper than him, will not just bring them to tears, but will actually bring them to cry with their voice. Ares from the kelim merev simcha, that they'll go out with joy, they'll completely lose themselves. So after the first one finishes speaking, and before the second speaker comes and speaks and grasps the audience even greater, in between, there are no tears in the eyes of the listeners altogether, even though they still remember the first speaker. So the Rebbe says at the end, Kemuven, the redner in Nimshal is the seichel, the redner wegen Gedulus HaBeire. In the Nimshal, in the moral, the example would be that the speaker is the intelligence, and the seichel, the speaker is the intelligence, and the speech is what he's speaking about. He's speaking about the greatness of God or about the lowliness of man. So bottom line is that why is there a fall? It's not a fall fundamentally, it's a fall from the state that you were in order to reach the higher state. So that becomes a prerequisite whenever you're moving from one place to another. And I just quoted the letter, you could look it up yourselves. Okay. Let's now move over to the Chassidus essays, the 3 essays for this week. The first one is Coping with Job Loss, Forging Ahead by Hindi Kalmanson. Let me just... By Hindi Kalmanson, age 59, teacher in New Haven, Connecticut. So this is a very well done essay, which talks about a job loss, being fired from a job, and we don't have a job for you in the fall. She was called in, and of course it can be she was dumbstruck, and talks about how it completely shook her up, and then how she was helped personally through a few sources. The Alter Rebbe Negeres Akedah Simcha Chav Hei talks about rage and kas, and how a person can control that by realizing that everything is designated from above. And it explains that Negeres Akedah very well. Then also the similar situation with Yosef and his brothers, as explained in Tanya, the end of chapter 12, and citing a Zohar. A Zohar, does she bring what page in the Zohar? The Zohar is Abba, okay? And then, of course, the Rebbe Sikh in Lekutei Sichos, volume 36, Batagud V'Zaingut, and the story, of course, of the Tzemach Tzedek, the last night of the Alter Rebbe's, before the Istalkus, that night, the Alter Rebbe told him not to be sad. And all these things describes in a very personal way how it helped her get through this difficult situation of losing a job. And translates it in a very, in a methodology with several steps. Very good essay, and essays can be seen by subscribing to the weekly newsletter we send out, or you can go to meaningfullife.com/MyLife /essays-2016. The next essay is The Ultimate Relationship, Selflessness or Assertiveness, by Itcha Zalmanov, age 34. He's a Batimacher working for Rabbi Yossi Altein in Brooklyn, New York. The quandary. The common knowledge tells us that in true relationships, the most important thing is to be completely selfless and devoted to your spouse or friend, and to nullify all sense of self-satisfaction. And yet, you can't just be a robot, you have to be a person with feelings. So it goes into Maimer from Atav Etzav V'Tov Shem Aleph, is the last Maimer that Rebbe gave out, and talks about the different stages, the different ways the revelation took place by Matan Torah, in times of Anias, in times of Hashidus Esher, from talking about Shefer Gadol and Dochim Beretz Mitzrayim and Oivdim Beretz Ashur, and talks about how we can learn from that assertiveness, the ultimate bond, fusion of selflessness and assertiveness, and application in practical terms. So that's essay number 2. And finally, essay number 3 is Thinking Positive versus Thinking Positive by Avram Lichter, age 28, Reish Kel Beitar Elit Israel. It's a Hebrew essay, also beautifully done, that talks about positive thinking, but the difference between positive thinking in secular terms in the world and positive thinking in Chassidus, which is far more fundamental, that it's more than just thinking positive, but thinking about the connection to the divine. And it gives beautiful examples in the process. Very well done essay as well. So with this we conclude MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 129. Until next Sunday, everyone be well, a good Chodesh Elul, a good Gebench Yar, 8 to 9 p.m. every Sunday. This has been MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 129. Thank you very much.